at Redmond, Washington. Police say they believe Sherman was also involved in an earlier single-car hit-and-run. NFL insider Adam Schefter joins us with the details. And Adam, what more can you tell us about the situation involving Richard Sherman?
Phil, this is a situation that unfolded early this morning in Seattle, Washington, where Richard Sherman, according to the Washington police, plowed into a concrete barrier, abandoned his car where police later found it, and they found it registered to him, and went to a house of a member of his family. The police were called onto the scene. Richard Sherman was brought in. He's being held on suspicion of domestic violence, burglary. They obviously took some blood tests at the time. He was brought down, I'm told, by a Washington police officer who was about his size. They were trying to get a hold of him to take him in for further testing and questioning. He was brought to a hospital. He was cleared. He was brought to a jail, again, where he's being held on suspicion of those charges. He cannot be charged, Field, until he goes before a judge, which is not scheduled to be until 4:30 Pacific time on Thursday. So that means that Richard Sherman will remain in the King County Correctional Facility for another 24 plus hours until he can go in front of a judge who could then charge him with whatever they deem necessary.
Adam, we're just hours after the initial incident took place, but what sort of reaction have we heard from people close to Sherman thus far?
People, I think, are surprised. When I spoke to the 49ers early this morning before this news had surfaced, when we were trying to figure out exactly what had been going on, they didn't even know about it and were frankly very surprised at the type of person that they know Richard Sherman to be, that something like this could happen. And so I think there was general surprise around the league when you look at all he's done, all he's accomplished, all he's meant to certain people, a board member of the NFL Players Association, a decorated player, a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, somebody who's got a tremendous pedigree and resume. Somebody could be involved in a night that seems to have gone completely sideways for Richard Sherman, and now there are going to be legal consequences that absolutely will impact his NFL future.
Yeah, Sherman, of course, a free agent for right now. What, if anything, have we heard from Sherman's family?
His wife spoke to the Seattle Times a short time ago, and she said that they didn't want to make any statements, but she did say he didn't harm anybody. My kids were not harmed in the incident. He's a good person, and this is not his character. We're doing all right, just trying to get him out. I want people to know no one was injured. Interesting statement from his wife. In some ways supportive, in other ways not so much. We won't read into it beyond what she said, but obviously this is a tremendous situation legally, personally, that Richard Sherman is going to have to get himself out of.
Yeah, and Schefter, I know it's so early in the process, Schefter, and we have a lot of, I think, moments ahead of us in this specific situation, but do we have any sense about how this might impact the future for Richard Sherman, who, as I mentioned before, is still a free agent in mid-July?
Still a free agent, Field, and let's remember that he represents himself and doesn't have an agent. And so somebody who is been trying to get a job a couple of weeks out of training camp is in jail right now until tomorrow. So obviously there's a whole legal situation that has to play out and run its due course. Teams will be paying attention, but clearly no NFL team, you would think, would be willing to bring him to camp until these charges are settled one way or another. There had been some discussion that the New Orleans Saints might have some interest in signing Richard Sherman, bringing him to camp, having him on the roster. I think right now, obviously and clearly, everything gets put on hold until we learn more about the wild situation and scene that unfolded last night outside Seattle.
And perhaps we'll learn a little bit more in about 30 minutes when police are scheduled to address the matter out in Seattle, Washington. Adam Schefter will be with us throughout the hour. Schefter, we'll check in with you in just a little bit.
Thank you, Phil.
NFL teams now have less than 24 hours to reach long-term deals with the players they use the franchise tag on. So will any deals get done between now and then? Let's roll through some of the interesting ones, and we'll start in Tampa Bay, where Chris Godwin, somehow only 25 years old still, already reached the end of his rookie contract. The Bucks, as we know, have been busy this offseason keeping the band back together. If extended, he would join the likes of Tom Brady, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, Donovan Smith, and so many more to be extended in Tampa this offseason. Let's stay in the NFC South, where the Saints used the tag on safety Marcus Williams, perhaps the biggest surprise during the franchise tag window. But Williams, a 2017 second-round pick, has played in 60 of 64 possible games thus far in his career, starting all of those contests. He's an essential part of one of the league's best defenses and a homegrown talent. And yet another wide receiver who was tagged this offseason is in Chicago, as the Bears applied the designation on Allen Robinson. This comes on the conclusion of a 3-year deal that he signed with the team as a free agent after beginning his career in Jacksonville. Hey, Robinson's one of only 4 players with at least 200 catches over the last 2 seasons, along with DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, and Travis Kelce. And while those other 3 receivers have played with quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, and of course Patrick Mahomes, Robinson has caught passes from the likes of Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. We say hello now to our crew today for the show. We've got from left to right Marcus Beers, Jeff Saturday, and Jeff Darlington. And Jeff Darlington, we'll start with you. Remind us why Robinson is not thrilled with his treatment from the Bears up to this point.
Well, look, this one goes way back, and it is complicated, it is complex, but ultimately it comes down to Allen Robinson feeling disrespected as far back as last September, when these negotiations really for a long-term deal felt like they were most serious. Really, from that point, the two sides have never been able to get on the same page. Robinson had made it clear that he felt disrespected. He had done everything to exceed, actually, the expectations of the contract he signed in 2018. And for whatever reason, the Bears have never decided to give the long-term offer to Allen Robinson that he wants. And so he will play on the tag with his eye on free agency. And to me, based on my conversations, it feels like the bridge continues to be so wide that I don't know how after this year Robinson could ever wind up suiting up for the Bears again. We should point out that he's been the good soldier. He hasn't had any kind of holdouts, any of those types of situations. This just feels like a weird one. It's tough to explain, Field.
It certainly is, and I can see Marcus shaking his head already. So they just drafted Justin Fields, and perhaps you've already given me the answer to my question. How important is getting Allen Robinson locked into a long-term deal for the development of Justin Fields?
Babyface is vital, man. And what the hell are we talking about right now? I mean, I knew this was coming up, but I done got emotional since we got on TV. Every NFL team is looking for a number 1 guy at wide receiver. Every one of them. If you don't have one, you up boo-boo creek. It's another word for boo-boo, but we on TV, so I'm going to use boo-boo creek. Allen Robinson, back-to-back years of 1,000 yards receiving. And might I add, not knowing who the hell his quarterback was going to be for majority of the time. This dude has produced. He's played well under pressure while he